What if I told you that most youth pastors are only getting a raise at like half the rate of inflation, if they're even getting raises at all? Today we're going to break down some of the data from the Youth Pastor Compensation Report survey and look at what some experts had to say, like Dan Navarra when he sat down on the live stream with Download Youth Ministry and co-leader's very own Josh Boldman, so that you know exactly what you should be making based off of your experience level and your ministry load. And be sure to stick around to the end of the episode because I'm going to share with you the one thing that people who are getting raises are doing on a consistent basis. Welcome everyone to the Hybrid Ministry Show. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Hybrid Ministry Show. If you and I have not had a chance to meet yet, my name is Nick Clayson. I am a youth pastor for 15 years, currently serving in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth. And recently, Josh Boldman, Dan Navarra, a couple weeks ago, hopped on a live stream. You can access it on the DYM Facebook page or over on their YouTube channel. And they're getting ready for prepping and putting together and gathering of data for the 2026 Youth Pastor Compensation Report, which is a fantastic tool that has been going on now for the last 10 or so years. And there's a recent question that said, hey, is there a rule of thumb or a, quote, pay scale for bivocational part-time youth pastor positions? I know that the calling outweighs the pay, but I feel ignorant if I don't at least ask for research before discussing with leadership on this topic. And then, of course, you hop down into the comments, and it says, Dan Navarra, youth pastor compensation expert. Highly recommend contacting him. Highly recommend the report. So, link down below is the 2025 report, as well as the link for the 2026 Google form so that you can fill out some of the data that, for your salary and your benefits, which will help influence the compensation report survey. But to answer that question specifically, part-time youth pastors, 66% of those, right, are working just about 29 or so hours. And they reported that they were not in any way, shape, or form having any sort of regular review system. So they're doing the work without knowing how they're doing. Meanwhile, those youth pastors who worked an average of, say, 16.8 hours, the survey said, earned an average wage of $20,877 based back in 2024. So if you are part-time, 15 to 25 hours, the average, again, this is average, but the average wage is about $20,000. And so that's the actual answer to the question. And also the good news that they saw in the report last year is that year over year, they're seeing youth pastor wages raise on a regular basis. And so that's the good news. However, at about the 13-15 mark, Dan actually had this to say. Check it out.
Here's probably some of the numbers underneath the hood that aren't as great. It went up at half the rate of inflation.
That's actually true, and I actually was at the DYM 100 conference where Dan not only spent some time talking, but they also had a keynote speaker, Ed Stetzer, who got up, and he shared this graph. If you're watching here on screen on YouTube, you can hop over to our YouTube channel if you're not watching live, where you can see this graph where he's comparing inflation versus wages. And if you look down there at the bottom, again, I know I got a picture of another youth pastor's head. In 2019, inflation versus wages was inflation was beneath wages, where now inflation is nearly at double the rate of what wages are doing. And so wages have not been doing a good job keeping up with inflation. And this isn't just youth pastor data. This is across the board data. And so this is a real conundrum as it pertains to youth pastors and youth ministries. But there were two other interesting questions and two other kind of unique findings in this before I share with you kind of the one key thing. One of them was curriculum seemed to have a positive influence with a youth pastor's salary. In fact, at the about 28 or so minute mark, check out what Dan had to say.
And at first glance, you would think it's counterintuitive, right? The church is spending money on curriculum, so of course they're not going to spend as much on their youth pastor. And it's actually an inverse relationship. The big idea to me is so much of youth pastors making a decent wage is longevity. The entry-level youth pastors bring the average down for sure. And half of the survey respondents have been in ministry for less than 5 years, pretty much every year. And so you've got a bunch of low earning new youth pastors anchoring the data. And when I say anchoring, I mean pulling it down, which is fine. It's still part of the average. Churches that are willing to invest in the budget of a youth ministry enough to say, hey, we're going to spend, I don't even know what those things cost anymore. I've been out of it for 5 years, but like DYM, I think gold used to be like $20 a month, right? So if a church is going to spend $600, $700, $800 on curriculum, right? Like what they're saying is, we want to invest in our youth ministry, the quality of our youth ministry, and the longevity of our youth pastor.
Josh Boldman, who was interviewing him, actually goes on to say this. He says, hey, listen, what we always say at Co-Leader, which if you didn't know, Co-Leader, use Hybrid Ministry 10 for 10% off your first year at Co-Leader. But he says, if writing gives you life, then by all means, write your own curriculum. But what they try to do is they try to offer a curriculum service or a program service or graphics, or all of this is all included in Co-Leader, like graphics and parent email and a whole program and song suggestions and graphics and bumper videos and social media for your sermon series. He said, if any of that stuff drains you, doesn't bring you any life, like use what we have to offer, use another service. And that's what kind of both of them were saying, like, let something like a curriculum buy you the time that you need to save yourself 10 hours, not to do less, but to go invest in the relationships and the small group leaders and the students that God has entrusted into your care, which frankly is a similar idea to the concept that I have here on the Hybrid Ministry Show. If social media is something that you know you should be doing or probably should be doing, but you simply don't have the time, I have this seasonal social media pack, drops 4 times per year. It leans into the different seasons, fall, winter, spring, summer, and it will help you have a consistent calendar of social media content. But it's more than just graphics, it's your custom students, your own as a youth pastor, maybe custom face, your volunteers, parents. It's your real people on your social media feed. Hey, quick break. Let me ask you a question. Are you still waking up every day as a youth pastor, scrambling to figure out what you need to post on your social media? Blurry dodgeball pic, a video that your leader sent you that's a little bit pixelated because iPhone still hasn't updated fully to RCS yet. You see, you don't need that kind of stress this fall. That's why I created the fall seasonal social media pack for youth pastors. It is 3 months worth of done for you content. Done for you, paired with some customization so that you and your leaders and your students are the faces and the personalities on your student ministry Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts feed. See, here's the thing. You can grab my pack right now over on Patreon. And did you know that monthly Hybrid Hero Patreon members who only pay $4 per month and get a bonus podcast, they get this pack completely for free. So if you do the math, for 3 months worth of social media content, it's only $12, where the pack is $17.99. Either way, it is a steal for you, and it will take away the stress of posting. And you can grab that pack right now and start becoming a master at social media and hybrid ministry in your youth ministry context. Rooting for you as you are crushing it this fall in your student ministry. So let us help you run social media. The best bang for your buck, become a $4 per month Hybrid Hero member. You'll not only get the packs included in your membership, but you'll also get a weekly bonus recap podcast to help you with your creative programming. The final question that was kind of asked was like, what about education? What about a master's degree? What about seminary? They said this at the 14-minute mark.
Our industry's so far behind, especially when you take into account that over 80% of all youth pastors either have a 4-year degree or a graduate degree. Like over a third of full-time youth pastors have a graduate degree. So we're highly trained, highly capable, highly competent in our role. These aren't entry-level laborers, so to speak, like an in-and-out employee might be.
So long story short, are master's degrees worth it? It's probably a little bit of a mixed bag, and it depends on what your ultimate goal is. If your ultimate goal is knowledge and to maybe blow the lid off the potential of what you're potentially capped out to make, then yeah, it's probably worth it. However, the traditional 80-hour MDiv, Navarra actually says like Liberty offers like a master's of theology at only like about 12 courses. You can do it completely online. And so you'll still get that kind of master's degree, but the juice of the MDiv might not be fully worth the squeeze that it's going to take, both from a time standpoint as well as a financial standpoint. The reason I said sound is because then they started comparing sound equipment and the fact that you like overhaul your entire sound system and speakers and soundboard in your space, but you don't do any sort of ongoing maintenance. And they're relating that to the same idea of not giving regular raises. And so eventually it comes to a breaking point where you haven't done it over years, and now you've not kept up with some of that inflation. And so therefore you have to take a massive jump, and it's going to be a stretch for maybe your church, your budget, your givers, and stuff like that. And so to continue to kind of do it, to continue to pace with maybe a little bit of inflation, to continue to pace with a little bit of cost of living, is going to be helpful for your church in the long run. Now listen, I get it. You're in that boat. You believe that. You might not be in a seat to make that decision, which this right here was the key that Dan pointed out was the one thing that you have to do if you want to experience a raise, because he said, education or not, we are in, as youth pastors, we are in the market of our skills reigning supreme. Those are going to be the primary questions that you're going to be facing in an interview context. I agree with that. I've experienced that. But the one thing that youth pastors who get raises on a consistent basis, the thing that they all have going for them is they have a regular cycle of annual reviews. We hinted at a little bit at the beginning. So for example, if you're a part-time youth pastor, only 66% of those working did not have an annual review. 66% did not, more than half did not have any sort of annual review. And so the analogy that he used, and he says, old phrase, they've used it every year, but the squeaky wheel is what gets the oil. So if you're not in an annual review asking for raises, you're not going to get one. That's going to, by and large, simply be the fact. If you want one, you're not asking for it, you got to get one. So if you are looking for a raise, an annual review is the key. Now, if your church doesn't host and have a culture of that, then this is an opportunity for you to step in, offer a suggestion for that, and lead up in that way. And he made a point. He said, if you ask the first year, you don't get it. He goes, but then you go around and the next year you ask and you do get it. It's all because of that, putting that annual review on the calendar. And here's the thing you need to know. Right now in the landscape for youth ministry, the good news is if you do go into that conversation and it doesn't go your way, if you need or are looking for a youth ministry job, you need to understand that there are more jobs out there than there are youth pastors. And so if your church chooses to not give you a raise, and in fact, actually it goes worse and they fire you, or you choose to step down because you're unable to provide for your family, there are a lot of jobs out there. And you as a youth pastor, you actually are in the driver's seat. You're in control in a lot of those scenarios. Don't be a jerk about it, but just understand that you have a fair bit of leverage, at least in the current climate here in 2025. So be on the lookout for 2026 when the compensation report will drop, and you'll get to have that data. And if you are in an annual review cycle, you can either download the 2025 version, or you can look ahead in 2026 and bring that data with you and compare it to A, what you're making, and then B, use that as a little bit of leverage to say, hey, this is what the average is for for churches across the country. They even have it broken down by state, and then you can ask your your supervisor, your executive pastor, your senior pastor, if you can get a raise based off of that. Well, hey everyone, I hope you found this episode helpful. Be sure to like and share and subscribe. But until next time, and as always, don't forget, stay hybrid.